Well, what's good, everybody? I feel good today. This is the Early Wedge, your weekly sports betting golf brand of record. That's right. We're here every single Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern time, but this is a special week. In fact, it's a special 3 weeks because we have arrived. The top 70 of the FedEx Cup point standings have made it to Memphis, Tennessee. All 4 days are expected to be in the 90s. It's going to be hot, 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 hot. We have a lot to unpack. Here are what the odds look like as we head into the week. Scotty Scheffler, despite maybe a little bit of regression, is still your betting favorite at plus 600. Then you got Jon Rahm at plus 850. Same for Rory McIlroy. All 3 of those players, if you look at it, had really, really good years. Jon Rahm, I would argue, had the best years. We got a lot to unpack. Let's bring in the stars of the show. You know him. You love him. My man, the counselor of Cassie and Nejad, and, of course, amateur status on the Twitter. On the X, Patrick. Gentlemen, good afternoon. How fired up, Patrick? Let's start with you. Are you that? Now we have arrived at the final 3 weeks of the season.
Now we have arrived, Coach. And I mean, look, this playoffs is much different than the last, all of them. You think only top 70 get in? We saw last week Justin Thomas come up short. Ben Griffin's bubble boy this week. Lucas Glover makes a huge move outside the 110. Now he's inside the top 50. He's on the inside track for the BMW Championship. Huge implications there. So there's a lot going on. And I didn't even touch on the big names at the top, like you said.
And we're going to get into that storylines in a second. But see, I come to you and say good afternoon. This will be the first time in the history of the FedEx Cup playoffs that for the first event, we do not have a cut.
Yeah, very interesting. By the way, playoffs, somebody had to do it. Okay, we got that out of the way finally. It's interesting because last week for this segment, I said a non-household name I thought was going to win the last week's tournament at the Wyndham. And it turned out it was a non-household name in the winner there. And I think this week we've got the 3 big guys at the top, but I really think it's that next tier.
Whoa. See, let me stop you right there. I'm just saying hello. I'm just saying I'm not into storylines yet because I still have a third person to say hello to. I was just saying hello and just kind of setting the stage for you. That's all.
Oh, in that case, Coach, hello there. How are you?
Fantastic.
Nice to see you both.
We'll get back to see his amazing storyline in a second.
Thank you.
But the last member of our crew, just because he's not on the screen does not mean he is not with us. Look into the chat. The great Steve Scott, who is on assignment this week, he's on a layover. And look what happens. He not only just sits on the layover, he tunes in. Any questions for Steve Scott, put them into the chat. He will answer them in real time. S Squared, thank you very much for taking the time to be a part of the show, as always. Now, he'll be back next week and the Tour Championship week, right here. I can't even talk today. Right here live on the show. All right. Now, let's get into storylines that could affect the betting lines this week. Patrick, I'm coming back to you. Let's start talking about the big boys because we showed the odds. The odds are where they're supposed to be. But what do you make of Rory and the Rahms and the Schefflers of the world? They've had a couple of weeks off. They're back this week.
We came into this year with a clear top 3 in the world of golf with Jon Rahm, Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy. And 8 months later, we still have the top 3 in the world with Jon Rahm, Scotty Scheffler, and Rory McIlroy. Yes, a ton has happened over those 8 months, but they come into the playoffs 1, 2, and 3 in the FedEx Cup points race with world number 3, Jon Rahm, leading the way. He hasn't won since that Masters victory, but in his most recent start, he has that runner-up at the Open Championship. Nearly caught Brian Harman, gave him a little scare there Sunday at the Open, and he is searching for his first FedEx Cup title. You think about all the accolades he has garnered. He wasn't able to get it done in 2021 when he had that great sprint to the finish, but Patrick Cantlay just had a little bit too much. Rory McIlroy looks for his 4th FedEx Cup title as well. He'd be the first to go back-to-back. Scotty Scheffler, after choking, it was a choke down the stretch last year, tries to get back in a little nugget that Skyhook just tweeted out. Scotty Scheffler around 7-1 this week. You can get him around 5-1 to win the FedEx Cup if you're that confident in him. The world number 1, the tee to green metrics. He's trying out new putters this week. If you like Scotty Scheffler this week, I don't mind a sprinkle on that 5-1 number as well.
Very, very interesting. So the big boys coming right out of the chute. But Sia, let me come over to you because I don't want to call the guys that are right below that tier the non-star players because they're stars, but maybe they're a little bit quieter or they've had a quieter year. Who are you looking at?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to look at I want to look at Patrick real quick because he did have Russell Henley first round leader last week. So props to you, Patrick. We had a little thing going on Twitter with Steve Scott in the chat because he thought his boy Adam Scott was going to be the first round leader. And prior to that, I thought Steven Yeager was going to be the first round leader because he was 6 under, like 9 through, and then back-to-back double bogeys. So we all had sort of our hands in it thinking we were going to be first round leader. But Patrick, good job with Henley. Yeah, so listen, here's the thing. We've got these top 3 guys, and they are the top 3 guys, but there's so many guys right below them, these second or even third tier players, where a lot of them have not gotten their signature win. I mean, Morikawa comes to mind, Tyrrell Hatton comes to mind, Matt Fitzpatrick. There's a lot of names that just have had like not terrible seasons, but relatively quiet seasons. Obviously, Hatton's has been a little bit more exciting than Morikawa's, for example. But I think that second tier, I think from an odds standpoint, those guys are live. So I'm really interested to see which one of those guys, if not, maybe there's more than one, emerges, in terms of contention down the stretch on Sunday.
By the way, in the chat, as you were talking, Sia, Steve Scott just pulled an EC. He says, I almost had it last week. Almost. EC is not cashing that ticket. Now, my storyline is going to focus on the release of the 2024 PGA Tour schedule yesterday. And you might be wondering at home, what does this have to do anything with the sports betting for this week? I'm going to tell you why. Here is the schedule. There are 8 signature events. Some are the same as this year, but some have changed. Mainly the one I looked at is AT&T at Pebble Beach. Most players during February, it's cold there. They don't like to go play there. But now it's elevated. 700 FedEx Cup points. The purse is elevated for all 8 of these. Now, the Genesis, the Memorial, and the API. Those will be the only 3 with a 36-hole cut. I think I have that right. Or without, I'll get that right. But, Patrick, let me come to you first, because the top 50 is very, very important. Because when you look at kind of the ins and outs, and there's a lot to unpack here, but the top 50 in the FedEx Cup standings after this week, basically they qualify for everything outside of what the Tour Championship provides. So as you looked at this, and you're going to write a bunch of articles on this, what did you make of the new schedule and also some of the qualifying?
I thought there were plenty of pathways for players to play themselves into these 8 signature events, and the field size for these signature events are going to be around 70 to 80 players. So it's not the 156 we see typically on the PGA Tour. And like you said, these qualifiers, you can finish inside the top 50 in this year's FedEx Cup. You can be a top 30 player in the world the week leading into it. There are also 4 sponsors exemptions, Justin Thomas. And then you have 2 other ones. You got the next 10, which is going to be the top 10 in that year's FedEx Cup, not otherwise exempt. They get into it. For the first 2, the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro and the Genesis Invitational, that will be the top 10 from the FedEx Cup fall. So this upcoming fall swing where players 51 and over, they will keep accumulating points towards top 125 status. So the top 10 from there will get into the first 2. And then you have the swing 5, which is, let's take, for example, the stretch between the Wells Fargo Championship and the Memorial there on the screen. Whoever gets the most amount of points in between those 2 tournaments, the top 5 FedEx Cup points getters, they will get into the Memorial and the Travelers Championship for those signature events. So plenty of ways to get yourself into these events. They're going to reward the hot hand, a lot of trending players who could really make their season, their careers with some of these signature events. And I think they've done a great job with the schedule.
And I think you've done a great job of detailing that. There's a lot to unpack there. Now, you've never needed at home the early wedge more than you're going to need us in 2024. But here's the deal. What Patrick just said, basically players that are hot. So in between the Century and the Pebble Beach, you got 3 events. The top 5 cumulative in those 3. So it's going to cause players to play more, add their results together, and the hottest players will make it into those signature events. So you may not qualify for Pebble Beach, but you could just qualify for the API, or not the API and qualify for the RBC. So as you trend along throughout the season, it could change for you if you're not one of the top 30 or the top 50 in the FedEx Cup standings. Again, that's a lot of information, but it absolutely affects how players will play this week. You're going to see a guy that's probably going to take more chances. Yes, they want to make it to the BMW Championship, but now they've got all of this that we just described to you to play for, if that all makes sense. All right. Now, you come here to cash tickets. And last week, we absolutely destroyed it all over the place. I hit 2 plus 300 finishing positions, a couple of head-to-head. Sia did too. Patrick, we all killed it. But now, we got to really take it #next level because there are only 70 players. And you got to understand the numbers are going to be a little bit skewed this week, not just in the betting market, guys, but in DFS as well. And that's where we start. So, Sia, I'm going to start with you. I need 3 that I can play this week. And as always, I need 1 player to fade.
Yeah, so one thing you definitely want to keep in mind is that there's no cut, right? So you get your players for 4 rounds no matter what. Now, that doesn't mean you should necessarily have the top 2 guys and then just live in the 6K range. But it does mean you need to focus on scoring specifically. And obviously your lineup constructions can be a little different because you don't have to worry about players missing the cut. I just want everybody to understand that when they're building their lineups, they're getting your guys for 4 rounds. Colin Morikawa is a guy I want for 4 rounds. Somebody in the chat mentioned he's a great course fit. I think he's a great course fit. I love the form coming in, especially with the putter, which was a problem earlier in the season. He's gained with the putter in 5 out of his last 6. Likely going to keep it in the fairway and be dialed in on approach. So I noticed his ownership, preliminary ownership, it's not super high, which surprises me. So I'm happy to take Colin Morikawa at 9,000. Sam Burns, his ownership is going to be high because he is that exact guy. Yeah, he might spray it a little bit off the tee, but he's got good history here. So that speaks volumes to me. But more importantly, dialed in on approach, dialed in with the putter, dialed in with the scoring metrics. That's what you want. And Sam Burns has all of that. So from a DFS tournament standpoint, maybe you want to pivot off of him if he gets too popular, but he definitely is a player in my pool as of now. And then Cam Davis at 7,200. Talk about a guy that's really come back from, I don't want to say the dead, but his game was pretty much dead in the middle of the season, at the beginning of the season. He has really bounced back. And a guy who can really score at 7,200, that's exactly what I'm looking for. The putter's in good shape. Ball striking's in good shape. 7,200, a very good price. And then finally, Xander Schauffele at 10,000. When you look at his history here, it's not very good. And when you actually dig a little bit deeper to see why it's not good, look at the metrics. I don't know why, because he does seem like a good course fit, but the metrics are really bad for Xander Schauffele. So a guy at 10,000 with those metrics on this course, and a guy that I don't really think can win with a field like this, I'm going to go ahead and fade him.
Yeah, I think he's an absolute fade for me this week as well. He just hasn't been responding at the top of the leaderboard the few times that he has been there. And I apologize, I got a little distracted as you were so eloquently giving us your DFS picks because something was just written in the chat that I guarantee you has never been written before. Big Cheesy says, EC's the man, Steve. It's an honor to be compared to him. Let that resonate for a second. Has that ever been said by a human being ever before? I say no. And I know somewhere EC is watching right now going, yeah, that's my man, Big Cheesy. Check is in the mail. All right, Patrick McDonald, what say you?
So you look at my 3 plays this week. They're pretty much the same version of the exact same golfer. You got Russell Henley, $7,800. Last 6 months, he is 14th tee to green. Number 1 in terms of driving accuracy. There's a lot of trouble out here at TPC Southwind. The rough is very penal, sticky Bermuda, tough to get it on the surface out of that. So I'm looking for fairway finders for the most part. I'm going to have a few wrinkles in there with my outrights and whatnot. But for DFS, I think all these guys have super high floors, top 20 type floors and the potential to pop off and win. Russell Henley, he didn't get it done last week, but I love the way he's been playing this entire season. So I'm going to buy in at 7,800 again. Corey Connors, literally, he's just like Russell Henley, but he's Canadian. So I like him at 7,600. 19th in strokes gained tee to green, 13th in terms of driving accuracy over that same time frame. And then you look at someone like Siwoo Kim. He's just like Russell Henley and Corey Connors, but he's a little more fiery, right? He's liable to break a club or 2 or 4. So I love him. 7,400, eats up TPC courses, 22nd in terms of tee to green metric, 4th in terms of driving accuracy. We've seen his upside at a tournament like the Memorial recently, where he was in the final group with Rory McIlroy in the final pair. That fateful Sunday that he finished top 5. I like that type of upside for Siwoo Kim. And I'm fading Victor Hovland at 10-2. I think of those in the 10K range. I agree with Sia and Coach. Xander wasn't, I'm not really feeling Xander this week. But outside of that, I think Victor at 10-2. just his floor. I think he has one of the lower floors of everyone in the 10K range. And it's all relative, right? He could easily finish 15th, 20th, but when you got Rahm, Rory, and Scheffler there, it's kind of hard to look at Victor, in my opinion.
I was unaware that being from Canada makes it harder or easier to win than being from the United States. I didn't know that till just now. Next level.
I mean,
look it up.
Canadians in Memphis. I haven't done the math. I haven't looked into it that deeply. I can't imagine they have a great history, but Corey Connors, if there ever was one, he's the guy.
Yeah. And sometimes Canadians don't like super hot weather either, because, they like to do the hockey and all the cold weather stuff. But you mentioned a term. You said they have a chance to win. Well, apparently Douglas is honed in the chat on a winner this week. And he says, my outright picks are Sepp Straka, Andrew Putnam, JT Poston, Denny McCarthy, Lee Hodges, Sahith. Damn, Douglas, how many are you picking? Yeah, see you. Go ahead.
Well, Douglas, a very big supporter of this show and of all of us on Twitter. The one thing I'll say about Douglas, he has a lot of picks every week. So the one thing I will just caution Douglas and anybody else that does this, especially with the top 40 plays and some of the parlays, just try to cull it down a little bit. I mean, those are obviously all long shots. Listen, it's golf; anything can happen, but you do want to have maybe a big pool of guys to bet on, and then you want to shrink it by the time you actually put money down.
It's great advice, as always.
I like some of those plays.
Yeah, I know, right?
I know you like some of those plays too. I'm just saying.
You're damn right. I just don't know 8 of them. But great advice, as always, from the counselor. Now, before we get to our, sometimes they call it our bread and butter, our first round leaders, we got to hear from one of our incredible partners.
Get breaking news.
Big news coming out of the NFL today.
Highlights and instant reactions.
The largest final round comeback in Tour Championship history. We're down to the Final Four.
I just want to take time to analyze greatness.
Talk winners and losers with a guy who's already a big winner. CBS Sports HQ. It's all sports all day long.
I don't know how we do it, but every week we seem to have a name at the top of the leaderboard Thursday afternoon for a nice little 18-hole sweat. Steven Yeager, what happened to you last week? 6 under, first 9. We were rolling. Until we were not. All right, Patrick McDonald. I'm looking at my notes right now, and I see 3 players that are absolutely not scared to go low. Let's start with you.
You know what happened to Steven Yeager? The rust bus came around, threw him off course. Boom, 40-1. See, so. I had to, it's normally this is your segment. I had to, get my name in there as well. And I see that we are simpatico on 1, which is good news for us. I like Colin Morikawa 35-1 to kick things off. He was the first round leader at the Players Championship earlier this season. And you think about this golf course, Sia just mentioned it. Pinpoint accuracy off the tee, pinpoint accuracy into these greens. I love Colin Morikawa, especially with the way he's putting and that upside. Tony Finau, we just saw him flash there at the 3M Open. He opened in a Yeager-like fashion with 6 birdies in his first 7 or 8 holes there at TPC Twin Cities. Wasn't able to get the job done, but I love Tony Finau every which way this week, and that will include round 1. And then Sam Burns. He isn't really the prototype of player I'm looking for this week, but whenever you're in SEC country, I'm not sure if Tennessee still falls in that with conference realignment. We could be out in California. It could be SEC country. I don't know. I was off the internet that day. I don't know what the Big 10 and Big 12 is anymore. So, but Sam Burns, over the last 2 years, he has the most strokes gained at this course. He lost in a playoff there to Abraham Ancer a couple years back. If he just has a, average, slightly above average tee to green type day on Thursday, the putter is so good that it could potentially carry him to the first round lead. So I love him at 40-1.
What do you think the over-under on? Well, it's really hard to get into these 2 schools we're going to have from the announcers when Duke plays Stanford in a conference title game, potentially. That makes no sense. Cal taking on North Carolina, hardcore rivalry right there. I can't figure it out. All right, Patrick. Well done. By the way, you're very, very funny today. Not that you aren't always, but I feel like you're on fire today. If anybody else thinks Patrick is on fire today, just write "on fire" into the chat for me. If you think Patrick is extra entertaining today, I'd really appreciate that. By the way, hit the like button. I always have to tell you guys to do that. Hit that like button, take the chat down, then put it right back up. All right.
Coach, I want to know what Patrick's pregame meal was, because like he is definitely, first of all,
Right?
last week he shamed me by having better hair than me. And then he hits the first round leader instead of me, takes out my guy effectively because of the rust bus. And now he's funnier than me. Like, this is not working out. I think can we get EC back on the show?
It's playoffs. Sia. Come on.
Whoa,
you got to
whoa.
raise your game. You got to raise your game.
That is true. And
It's on
see
me.
it. Don't ever say that again.
Yeah.
I'm
I'm embarrassed. Like he's overshadowing me. This is too much.
I understand that, but the hair thing, it's close. It's like 1A, 1B. You know what I'm saying? So I wouldn't be that embarrassed, but never asked to put EC back in Steve Scott's spot. Steve's in the chat, for God's sake. What would you do that? Why would you do that to Steve?
Because Steve's also too good. You understand?
Yeah.
Like the whole theme of this.
So you feel a little less than when Steve's here and Patrick's here. I get it.
It's not right.
I get it. Now, as fate would have it, guess what our next little segment is? It is what I like to call our bread and butter. And Patrick, I don't know if you want this to come up right now or not, but it is head-to-head.
It's not head-to-head. It's not head-to-head, Coach. It's my first round leaders. See, you don't even care about my first round leaders
you ruined
anymore.
my flow and I forgot.
What is happening?
What is going on?
Not only that, I have a worse number on Sam Burns. Like, this is just all piling up on me.
What's going on here?
Take Sam Burns at 40-1, not 35-1, obviously, for all the reasons that Patrick said, not me. And I'll just name 3 other guys as a formality, because I don't think anybody's going to take these, apparently. John Rahm at plus 1,800. Listen, I think John Rahm's going to win this tournament. I really do. I think his season's been a little underwhelming over the last few. He has a recent missed cut, but if you look at his metrics, they're all really good. He can get hot with the putter, weighted approach, weighted tee to green. It's still all inside the top 3. So the game is there. And I'll go ahead and take a shorter in a 70-person field. With so much talent at the top, I'll go ahead and take a shorter odds guy at plus 1,800 for first round leaders. We mentioned Sam Burns, Seb Straka. He's a guy that can fill it up any given round, and he's really been dialed in. So I don't mind this number at 40-1. And then finally, I already mentioned Cam Davis. This guy can get hot any given round, just like Seb Straka, just like Sam Burns, just like John Rahm. I think these are the prototypical first round leaders. I think one of them is going to hit.
I feel like I'm in the circus right now because my chair, I think, is broken, and I keep going lower and lower. And I sort of get, you guys see me? I'm going lower. Like it's off the rails. I got to oh, okay. You can't make this up. By the way, Lori in the chat just said this. She says, on fire, cracking me up at work, and I'm trying not to laugh out loud too much. You guys are awesome. Lori, you're awesome. But be very quiet. Turn the computer down, put the AirPods in. We don't want you getting in trouble. But you're right. We are awesome. We're very awesome. See, can I go to that thing that I was so eloquently going into now? Can I do that now?
I'll allow it.
Thank you. So now, as I was saying, last week, I had to teach a little lesson. It's just what I simply had to do. But I didn't tout it all over Twitter. No. I didn't tout it all over X. No, it's not my style. I wait until the smallest audience of the week. Right here. What are you doing, Patrick?
Oh, sorry.
Why are you looking down? Why don't you look straight into the camera? Okay. Own it. Do you remember last week, Sia, when I tried to talk my good friend Patrick out of Chris Kirk as a viable option?
I do remember that.
You remember that? And at some point on Friday, they just showed something on PGA Tour Live, and all I know is he was +6 at that point, so I didn't even need to look at the rest of it. So I apologize that I had to take some of the baby's formula away from Patrick McDonald. But this week, I've seen the picks. We might have another issue. All right, so it's time for a head-to-head matchups. And I believe, so the flow looks correct. Patrick, I'm going to let you go first. Who do you like this week, sir?
I like a lot. I got 5 matchups for you guys. The first will be Ricky Fowler, -130, over Matt Fitzpatrick. Fowler's been great, 7th in total strokes gained over the last 6 months. He's top 15, tee to green approach around the green and putting. Fitzpatrick, he has a nice history here, but really struggling, especially off the tee where he's lost 4 straight. That's not going to get the job done. So I'm going to lay the -130 for Fowler and Scotty Scheffler. All right. Numero uno against world number 3. I understand this was the last cut that Scotty Scheffler missed, but you look at any statistic, that isn't putting, Scotty Scheffler is probably leading that. Jon Rahm, he's playing great golf, don't get me wrong, but he's a bit more liable to hit one or two more wayward drives. So I'm going to go with the world number one, who's testing new putters this week over Jon Rahm. Russell Henley, -120 over JT Poston. Two guys who contended last week, but I like Russell Henley's tee to green and ball striking acumen a bit more than Poston. The driver really wasn't that good for Poston last week. It was a little too wayward for my liking, especially on this golf course. Henley, the number one most accurate driver in this field. Cameron Young, -120 over Sepp Straka. I mean, I don't know what we're doing here. Cameron Young's just a better player than Sepp Straka. I don't think that's a hot take. Yes, Straka's coming off a nice win there at the John Deere, a nice finish at the Open Championship. Cameron Young was right in the mix at both of those tournaments as well. He's playing for a bit more. He's just barely inside the top 50. Long-term, Straka's around 49th in total strokes gained over the last 6 months. Cameron Young, 25th. So I'm going to go with Young over Straka, and then Cantlay -110 over Victor Hovland. Cantlay's having a great year. The win variance just hasn't gone his way. Statistically, it's the best season of his career. This is a guy who's won 3 out of the last 6 FedEx Cup playoff events. When you go back to 2021, he loves a nice cash grab. Cantlay does. Each statistic ranks inside the top 15 from tee to green. Just needs a little help with the putter. And Hovland, I think he could be in for a T25-ish finish, which I think Cantlay will pass him by.
So here's the deal. I had a 5th head-to-head that I was going to send in, and it just happened to be Victor Hovland over Patrick Cantlay. And I can't make this up. And as I was doing all of my research, I went back and I looked at every single show that we've done, 30-some shows, and we've never, ever, ever had 4 head-to-heads that we disagreed on, ever. I looked at every single one. So it begs the question, and see, I'd love you to come in right now, because having 4 that we disagree on, feel like we need to take it to a playoff level when it comes to a showdown. I just don't know what to do. Do you have any suggestions, sir?
I mean, you could have 4 showdowns. I don't know. Just something I just thought of. Crazy town.
Did you say 4 showdowns? 4 showdowns? 4. Interesting. Well, what if we do this? What if we do 4, and if one person goes perfect, right?
Oh boy.
Perfect. Then what do you think I'm going to say? Then we add a little bonus play to it. So it'd be an even 5 if it's 4 to 4 and what? So that doesn't make any sense. Let's start over.
No. If you go 4-0, you tack on an extra 100, 500 to the winner.
I love it. But I don't want that 100 to go to you or I. I want it to go. What was the charity, Sia, that we supported last week? What was that?
That was rachelsbears.org, which supports pediatric patients in hospitals with teddy bears and children's books, things of that nature, things that can immediately put a smile on their face while they're in the hospital.
Yes, that one. So I want the extra 100 to go to that. And if I beat you like 3-1 and I win 200, all of mine is going to that this week. So it's all about the kids for me. So 4 different showdowns, separate showdowns. Patrick McDonald, this is next level kind of stuff. Are you in or are you out?
Look, Coach, I think it's very admirable of you to have all your money go towards the kids this week, especially St. Jude week. I'm in the middle of a move, so I can't say that's going to be the same for me personally. So I'm playing for myself. It's time to be selfish. And the train's in the background. It's humming. It's coming. Snake, play that music.
Let's go!
It's gonna be a showdown.
Oh, it feels so good. So to be clear, for those of you who are brand new to the Early Wedge, and I know there's a lot of you out there, first of all, welcome. When we have a showdown, when we disagree, we don't make it a negative. We turn it into a positive, because there's all kinds of reasons. I can see his 4 plays. I just like mine better. So JT Post has been on fire. Russell Henley, yes, he has too. I think Post is a little more consistent. Scheffler has not been putting at all. You heard Patrick say that he's testing out a new putter. Do I want to risk that? I'll take Rahm. Brian Harmon. Tom Kim, you got to understand, the reason I played him, Tom Kim has a very bad ankle. He pulled out last week of the Wyndham Championship. He did an interview on CBS. They asked him directly, how is your ankle? And he waited a couple seconds. And he goes, which means that he is nursing it round the clock. I'd rather take a healthy, open champion over a person who tied second, who I love very much, but he has a bum ankle. To me, how is this even plus 100? I can't even believe this is plus 100, to be honest with you. And then Sepp Straka, last year, right at the top with Will Zalatoris. The man loves this golf course. And Cameron Young, yes, Patrick. Cameron Young's a better player. Sometimes. But not this week, big boy. Not this week. The first ever 4-way showdown on the Early Wedge. I absolutely love it. See you, Nejad. You're up.
On the Early Wedge or the Early Edge. This has never happened before with SportsLine. This is an epic, epic moment. Okay, I'm going to go with Ricky Fowler minus 135 over Jason Day. We've already sung the praises, Patrick, specifically of Ricky Fowler. I mean, he's been very good this year across the board. Jason Day, good last time out, but he's been very inconsistent, particularly on approach where you're going to need to have that here. So I'll ride that inconsistency to a win with Ricky Fowler minus 135. Lucas Glover minus 110 over Lee Hodges. Listen, I've been touting both of these guys for the last few weeks. I think they're both very good, but Lucas Glover is better. Lucas Glover is a better player than Lee Hodges. He's been far more consistent. He's hitting greens in regulation at a higher rate. Hodges is doing well in that department, but Glover's doing better. The ball striking is there, and we know that the putter can get very hot with Lucas Glover, which we haven't been able to say before. So I'm surprised by this line. I think it should be minus 135, minus 140, but it's not. I'll take Lucas Glover. And then finally, Coach, you said it. I saw that interview, and I didn't see it live, admittedly. I actually went back and watched it just 2 hours ago because I really wanted to know. I saw the quotes, but I wanted to hear him say it. I wanted to see what his body – I'm a poker player, World Series of Poker main event casher, by the way. Don't worry about it. But I wanted to see his body language as he talked about his injury. He used the word hopefully twice. Now, it is very clear he's going to play. And it's very clear his team basically said – he said it himself to, like, suck it up. But when you use the word hopefully twice, it doesn't speak to you even being out on the range like that day or the day after. To me, I think just mechanically he might have some problems, but – I don't think he's going to withdraw, but I mean, I like Brian Harmon over him anyway. And so you give me two hopefullys on an ankle injury, and I'm going to go ahead and ride that.
I'm so glad you used the word withdraw, because that's the other thing. Even if you don't want to bet this, well, think about this. I wouldn't bet the other way. I would bet Brian Harmon, would you not see it or nothing? Because what if he goes out and his ankle does flare up? That could happen. And if he pulls out 6 holes in, 9 holes in, 1 day in, guess what happens for our tickets? See ya.
Right.
Tell the good people at home.
He only has to play 1 hole. He plays the first hole in WDs, just like any other matchup. You're going to cash your ticket.
There you go. By the way, Lori, positive again. Love it, guys. She says, I work in healthcare. And wow, educate, entertain, and contribute. Let's go, Coach. Clearly, she's talking about me and Sia, as Patrick is being very selfish this week. And then Big Cheesy says, Coach just talking about why his picks are better. I'm tailing Pat McDonald. He is heating up. Do any of us not talk about why our picks aren't better? I mean, that's the whole point of being here. Damn, Big Cheesy. I don't know. But I'm feeling good today. I'm having a hell of a good time. Hopefully you all are too. Now, next up, as the snake is always all over it. These, be very careful. Maybe not a full unit. Maybe chop them up just a little bit. Finishing can turn into a T20 in a very bunched up leaderboard like we've had the last couple of weeks. It doesn't take much. To fall out of a cash. So be very, very careful. Counselor, let's come to you.
Yeah, well, let's start with Lucas Glover, a guy I just talked about at plus 100. Listen, he's just been locked in. And I do think it's interesting to note what Patrick said earlier about Lucas Glover, that he went from basically triple digits or whatever it was in the high 70s or 80s in terms of the FedEx rankings to 49th. So he has to play really well just to obviously maintain that position and make the BMW championship. And I do think that matters because he's coming off a win. If he wasn't coming off a win, I wouldn't even be going down narrative street here, but he's coming off a win. So I think a lot of people will say, well, he's coming off a win. It's probably a letdown moment. Well, when you know you're 49th, there's no letdown there. You have to stay with the same sort of poise. And I think Lucas Glover is going to do that. I like plus 100. And then Cam Davis, I've already talked about him. Honestly, I think he's the type of guy that has the upside to top 15 this tournament, maybe even top 10. So I'll take him at the top 30 at plus 100.
And Steve Scott, to back you up in the chat, said something very, very important. He says this again. Keep in mind the players are playing all 4 rounds. Bum ankle for 4 rounds will be tough. The flip side of that is also for Lucas Glover. A lot of times, the hardest thing to do in golf is to repeat and play well 2 weeks in a row. That's not been the case for Lucas Glover. Yeah, he hasn't won a bunch, but look at all of his finishes this summer. It's like T4, T6, T8. And yes, he may struggle a little bit on Thursday, but he's got 4 days to get that energy back going. And with only 70 guys, a top 30, Lucas Glover only has to beat 40 other guys. For my top 20, he's only got to beat 50 other guys. And then Brian Harmon, top 10, he's been on fire, played well here a year ago at plus 320. Now, I'm sure you're asking yourself at home, how come I don't see Rory, Rahm, Scheffler, any of these guys in your finishing positions? Go to your sports book. Look at the odds. Scotty Scheffler for a top 10, I believe, is minus 150, or a top 20 is minus 150. You can't play minus 150 in this particular thing. You will go broke if you're playing minus 150s routinely week in and week out. This is different, and you've got to listen to my guys. This is a different week. Only 70 players. All right. Now, it is always fun when you get to the end of a tournament and you can predict that winner. We've been very, very close this summer. Haven't hit one in a while, but I think this week could be our week. But before we do that, we got to pay those pesky little bills. Here's another word from one of our incredible partners.
CBS Sports Network goes all in with the World Series of Poker. We're talking a full house of characters in a competition flush with cash. The World Series of Poker on CBS Sports Network.
2006, your boy entered a World Series of Poker tournament just to say that I could do it. 1,500 over 2,000 players. 22 minutes in, pocket aces get beat by pocket fours, 4 on the river. Bye-bye. Met my now ex-wife that night at the club, which I wouldn't have been there if I wouldn't have got knocked out. And I have 2 beautiful kids from that marriage. So it all came out moderately well. I did say ex-wife. So there you go. All right. Now, I love picking a winner. We all love winning, but it's very, very difficult to do. So Patrick McDonald, I'm coming to you. And as I look at my notes, I actually really like 2 of your 3 picks this week. That's unusual for me. You're up.
Yeah, it's a give and take relationship we have, Coach, right? We can't just be going at each other's necks the entire time. We got to,
That's true.
find some common ground. So
That's true.
I love Colin Morikawa this week at 22-1. You think about TPC Southwind and what it demands from players. It's really put the ball in the fairway. You're going to have something between 150 and 175 yards more times than not. And when that comes to mind, it's Colin Morikawa. Finished T5 here. The train agrees. So I love him this week. The putter, like Sia said, is coming back. Sam Burns, 35-1. It's just really, the metrics don't really back it up, in my opinion, but he's a momentum player, kind of like we said last week about a Billy Horschel. He's coming off a T14 at the Sedgefield Country Club. He loves this golf course. He's played well here before. He missed a 3-footer in the playoff to Abraham Ancer. He easily could have extended that one and potentially won. So I like him. And Tony Finau, when you pan out last 6 months, 10th in tee to green, 5th in approach, 13th around the green. He was T5 last year. He heated up around this time last year. He has a ton on the line with the Ryder Cup. He's 10th in the FedEx Cup points, so he could make his way up that as well. But I think he's really looking to roam in the U.S. team. And if he puts together a strong playoff stretch, he's going to make it really difficult for Zach Johnson to leave him off that team.
So many different ways that players are entering this week's tournament. So many different things going through their minds. I'm glad you pointed that out. Quickly, Jeff has a question for Sia. Do you like Sam Burns over Jason Day in a tournament matchup?
It's a lean for me. The problem with Sam Burns is while I'm happy to ride his upside in DFS and maybe as an outright ticket, I do think he has some downside too, whereas I think Jason Day could be a little bit more steady. With that said, the approach play has been better with Sam Burns. So, I mean, it's a lean, but it's not an official play that I would make.
All right. I'll be very, very quick. I love Tony Finau, all the same reasons. When it's a competitive, really competitive tournament, Tony Finau loves to step up. And Sepp Straka, just look what he did a year ago. And then this year, he's been even better. So I like Sepp to step it up. And at this number, plus 5,000, I can really sink my teeth into that. I can't wrap my head around plus 900 or plus 850 for Rory and Scheffler. I just can't do that. Even if you win, the risk is just too high. It's just there's no value at less than plus 1,000. Now, as always, Sia is always educating us. He's the smartest guy in the room almost every single time. And what he's done this week in the winner's market, very, very smart. Enlighten us.
Well, real quick, I mean, I do agree with you about the plus 1,000 thing. I think Rahm was close enough to that for me to justify it. You all know that I've watched this show. This might be the first time I back somebody at triple digits instead of the 4 or 5 digits that we're accustomed to seeing. But I do think Jon Rahm slipping to plus 900 versus what we see with Scotty and Rory, which is in that plus 650, plus 800, 850 margin. So I'm going to go ahead and take Jon Rahm. Listen, again, weighted approach, weighted tee to green, just the way he's been playing. He did have that miscut, I believe, at the Travelers, but Open Championship looked good. I just think Jon Rahm is ready to kind of put himself back into the conversation officially with Rory and with Scotty Scheffler. So I like him at plus 900. Tyrrell Hatton, another guy we already talked about, really like the ball striking and his ability to get hot, specifically knowing he has 4 rounds. I think this could be a signature win moment. But honestly, of those 2,200 guys, it's Colin Morikawa that I like the best. And I'm glad we have relative agreement on him. He seems, even though he hasn't won in a while, he seems like a very, very good course fit. And I do think the ball striking paired with the putting, it's just like the right time to be taking Colin Morikawa, especially because it does look like he has fixed the putter. The 2 things I just want to point out that you see on the screen, this looks like a boat. This looks like the Love Boat. I love these picks. Looks like we're going to cruise to victory. And I just want to point out on DraftKings and maybe some other books, you actually have the option of choosing the winner without Rory and Scheffler. So again, this is not at every book, but the good news here is I already have Hatton and Morikawa's plays. My thought here is on DraftKings, for example, you can just take Rory and Scheffler out of it. This is an option, and you're only losing 2 points for each of Hatton and Morikawa. So instead of 22-1, you get 20-1, and you don't have to worry about Scheffler or Rory winning, because if they win, they're taken out of this equation. So something to consider at 20-1 if it's being offered. But again, just as 22-1, I like both of them.
That is some hashtag next level capping right there. Can you imagine if Morikawa finishes third behind Rory and Scheffler or something of that nature? That would be incredible. That would be
very possible too. Like 100%. Very possible, right? Yeah.
100%. Thank you to Steve Scott in the chat. He's been answering amazing questions this entire show. Thank you, Steve, very much. I know he's on his layover to an assignment right now. So we have arrived at the final segment of the show. If you are new to the Early Wedge, again, thank you for showing up. We want you to be a member, and we want you to be a member today. Now, before I get to the long shots, if you are not a member, I'm going to do you a solid, because we want you from now on. I'm going to give you 60% off. 60% off your next 3 months of SportsLine. All you got to do, use a promo code COACH, and you get the 3 months for 60% off. Then after that, you'll be playing with house money all the way into the NFL season in November. Only if you're not a SportsLine member. Let's grow. Let's grow. Now, this segment, it could be anything. It could be anything. A really high number for a winner. It could be a top 5 EC parlay from DraftKings. It could be anything. So, as I look at my notes, see, Nejad, you have one name and one name only. Talk to me.
Yeah, I have one name for each of the first round leader and outright markets. So we'll see the graphic, make sure it's on there. But Cam Davis as an outright at 80-1. Listen, it's a long shot in a big, big way. But I do think Cam Davis is the type of player that he's on a certain trajectory that I don't think we've seen the peak of yet. And he's the type of player we've seen contend and win before. So if he's really back and if he's continuing to be on an upward trajectory, I do think he could potentially be in the conversation on Sunday afternoon. And then the first round leader, listen, Andrew Putnam, like his finishing positions on this course have been so good. And it's something like Rick says, I think, strokes gained magic beans. Like, I don't know what he's figured out. Granted, his approach play and putting are pretty good, but he's figured something out. So while I don't think he can win this tournament, I think as a first round leader long shot, I had the 4 in the main part of the first round leader segment. I think if you wanted to sprinkle on Andrew Putnam because of his history here at plus 7,000, I don't have a problem with it.
I don't have a problem with it either. But by the way, I hate giving Big Cheesy credit, but he just had the line of the day. He just said, where did it go? He says you get 80% off using EC's promo word almost. That is very, very funny. That is very, very funny. And what's funny is that EC is actually in charge of those promos for us. So he can actually do that. He can actually do that. He is. All right. Now, this is something I found. Now, you know this. I like to throw in an EC parlay every single week now. It's fun. So at plus 11,000, Sanjay, he played decent last week. Almost holed out at 18 twice. His approach hit the hole, and then his putt hit the hole on the same hole. But if these two finish in the top 5, and JT Poston has been there almost every single week the last 3 or 4 weeks, if you put those two together and they both finish top 5, plus 11,000. Found that on DraftKings. Go and look for yourself. So to me, that's definitely worth a little sprinkle. Now, Patrick McDonald, you decided to go with the man who wears not one glove, but 2. Tell me why.
Yeah, not Tommy Two Gloves, but Aaron Rye, 125-1. And first, I just got to co-sign Sia's Andrew Putnam play. I love Andrew Putnam. Loved him last week. Still love him this week. So 71, I'm all on board with that. But I'm going with Aaron Rye. He just fits the kind of the statistical profile I'm really looking at this week. Very accurate off the tee. The iron play is fantastic. Can he win this tournament? Maybe, maybe not. But at 125, I think it's worth just a small little sprinkle there.
All right. Very, very good. You've got a lot of different ways to attack the FedEx St. Jude Championship. As always, every day, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we will have round-by-round picks on the early edge so you can get a little sweat going individually as well. But you guys know that we like to end every single one of our shows asking my guys, what's the number one most important thing they're looking forward to this week? You can use this knowledge for this week or moving into the rest of the playoffs. Patrick McDonald, let's start with you.
It's hard not to look at that top 50 bubble with everything that's on the line. Like Sia said, Lucas Glover, 49th, still has to play very well this week in order to get into the Tour Championship and even remain inside the top 50. Someone on the outside looking in is someone like Hideki Matsuyama. Yes, he's had a very consistent season, but just not good enough. And then other bubble, the top 30. Jordan Spieth outside of it, Matt Fitzpatrick outside of it. There's a lot of big names with a lot of work to do, and it starts this week.
All right. See ya. Talk to me.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of those same big names. He mentioned it, Matt Fitzpatrick, Jordan Spieth, and even Patrick Cantlay. Some of these guys have just really been silent over the last few months, and I'm just waiting to see if they finally emerge because it's playoff time, because it's the end of the season. And I'm hoping that's the case, but I got to be honest, I'm also really focused on the top 3. We didn't talk much about Rory. We talked a lot about Rahm and a lot about Scotty. Is Rahm going to contend this week? And is Scotty's putter going to be a thing that's a positive for him? If it is, and if he catches momentum day one, watch out, because then he's going to at least psychologically think he might have that putter issue solved and he might run away with this thing.
And remember, that leads right into what I'm looking for the most, because this week, just so all of you know, all the FedEx Cup points are quadrupled, 2,000 points to the winner. So if you get in and you have a really good week, you can certainly jump up. But the game within the games, as the guys have been talking about, getting into that top 50 for a lot of players, not named Scheffler, Rory, or Rahm, that's very, very, very important. It's not just about getting into that top 30. So see who's trending, see who's playing well, see who plays good in heat, and really take some notes. Take some notes so you can understand moving into the BMW Championship just exactly who you want to play, because ultimately it's your decision at home. Another really great show, and we can't do it without all of you in the chat, all of you asking the questions, and another big thank you to Steve Scott for taking time out on his layover to always participate and be the 4th member of the crew. So with all that being said, it's time to get down to business. Do not forget, for those of you watching live, Early Edge and 5, top of the hour, with Amazing Grace and that entire crew. Now, there's only one thing left to do, and I believe you all know what that is. You've got your marching orders. Let's take all of these Early Wedge tickets straight to the pay window. For my entire crew, Lumbo, Patrick McDonald, the counselor, the snake always on the 1s and the 2s. I am simply the coach, trying to keep this train on said track. We grind for you so we can win with you. It's what we're all about at the Early Edge, but also right here at the Early Wedge. Good luck.